So today, so we are planning to discuss financial statement ratio and statement analysis, which is quite important subject in terms of development financing. Just to give an overview, basically now financial statements analysis and the ratio analysis is important in two ways. One is like if the customer is a say existing entity right now, if the customer is like conducting a business, it is good that we get to know what exactly the customer is doing, what is his financial performance, and what is his financial positions, because the customer may come in for a new project, but then we know what is the existing operations. That is the kind of advantage we have when we analyze the existing financial statement ratio analysis. That's one. Number two, if the customer is coming for a facility project financing where the customer does not have any previous financial exposure, I mean to say that customer is not running an existing business, then again, if you want to do how the customer's performance in future, still this ratio analysis is important on projected financial statements. Right? In later stage, we'll undertake how to do projected financials, but again, these ratios are important, whether it's like historical financials or projected financials, right? Generally, when you talk about financial statement and analysis, so these are important in the context of relative analysis, not only absolute perspective. Why I mean absolute is, let's say you have a customer running a company showing some financials or whatever balance sheet, VNL, cash flow data, but when you take it absolute perspective, there is no value. Like if I come and say I am running a company and my company's turnover is say 10 billion, it doesn't give much insight to you. Why? We need to see whether as per the competitors, as per the last year, as per the industry, what is your turnover? If the industry is say is 2 billion and mine in 10 billion, so I am a super performer. But the industry's turnover is something about 20, 30 billion and mine is 10. So it means, so I'm not very much doing good compared to the industry line. So always we try to, relatively look into these financial statements and ratios. Those are the important things that you need to keep in mind. And then, so we'll go into the presentation. So today, actually, I have shared you a couple of documents, presentation which we are discussing right now. And then there may be one reading material to support the content of the presentation. And then I have two sort of working document where I have given you some question on existing P&L balance sheet of a company and have done a kind of analysis on how we interpret the P&L and balance sheet. So that's one document. And then I have given you a ratio analysis, like ratio description. So there may be number of ratios which it's important for us to day-to-day financial evaluation. That document gives you what is the financial ratio under which cluster and how we are going to compute, like what's the equation, and then interpretation of that. Finally, I have given you a worksheet where you can when you go home you can do a kind of further familiarization exercise. So based on what we discussed today, so and the answers to that effect. So now how the ratios are being computed and what are the answers for that. So that's the data set that I have given you. Altogether there may be 6 or 7 documents that you can refer, because this is quite important subject area. Right. Generally, financial statement or ratio analysis, we try to understand two concepts. One is like financial performance, the other one is financial position. So in other words, it's like P&L and balance sheet. So asset minus liability is equal to book value of a firm, rather we called stockholders equity, and these three items representing the balance sheet or position. Revenue minus expenses, which gives you net income, which is the performance of a firm. So two main things: balance sheet, P&L. Balance sheet is something, asset minus liability gives you the equity, and the revenue minus expenses, which give the income, it's a P&L. So in other words, we talk about P&L balance sheet is something about financial performance and the position of the firm. These are four statements that come across in our day-to-day financial analysis, which is important for exam. You can put a tick mark because we need to know what are those financial statements and to give a one-line statement. What is balance sheet? What is P&L or income statement? What is stockholders equity statement? What is the cash flow statement? So basically these four important, just to list it and to describe it one line, so where you can get marks. Balance sheet is basically financial position of the firm, the content like asset liability given on a particular day. Income, results operations of a firm. Revenue expense, P&L for the accounting period. If it's a balance sheet, it's a given date. Income statement for a period. Then statement of a stockholders equity, it reconciles the beginning and the ending balances of all accounts that appear in the stockholders equity section of the balance sheet. So asset minus liabilities gives you the stockholders equity, and that area provides you opening and ending balances. Okay. Then cash flow is basically the real income, real important statement for project lending, where it shows the cash inflows and outflows of operating, investing, and financing activity of a firm for a accounting period. Say what is the net cash flow of operating activities, which is relevant to working capital of the firm. Then investing activity about an investment or disposal of fixed assets. Then financing is basically how you repay your debt, how much you have on board the new debt, what's like servicing of interest component. So those information would provide for financing. So cash flow statement is that. There are four statements in general. What are those statements? How are you going to interpret those statements are the important area that we need to know. Then as I was telling you at the outset, financial statements are no use that if we are going to use it on relative basis, right? That's a comparison to some base. That's what we are trying to understand here. So you can understand the financial statements in three relative formats. One is comparison across time. So what happened last year, previous year? Compared to last year, what is my performance? Compared to previous year, what was my performance during the last year and what is my performance this year. So year on year, over time, comparison across time is the first method of analysis. Number two, comparison within the industry. It means you are trying to compare the accounting numbers of P&L, balance sheet, cash flow of the similar companies in a given industry. Example, retailers have high inventory. Pharmaceutical firms have large R&D. So it's common. Now, let's say if your customer is into pharmaceutical trade industry, then you can think about what is the R&D expenses. What's like percentage of R&D expenses to the turnover. So you can compare it with the industry. You understand? So it's not an absolute view. It's a relative view is the important here. Third one, comparison within the financial statement rather than cross type, rather than cross industries. This is within. So where we call this type of financial statements as common size financial statements, where you try to take a base. Let's say turnover is your base. Say you say turnover is 100. And as of that, what is my other component? In balance sheet, you say asset is 100, equity is 100. And then as a percentage of asset, what's my current assets? What's my fixed asset? What is the debt? Debtors over my total assets. Like that, you try to give a picture within the financial statement. So it's another view. So there are three methods: comparison across time, comparison within the industry, comparison within the financial statement. So somebody asked about how we are going to evaluate. What are the methods of evaluation of financial statements? You can say these are the three methods that we can, provide. We can mention where the evaluation of financial statement for further understanding. So this is the common size income statement or common size balance sheet, right? This is something where the third method, where within the financial statement, so I have taken sales as 100, and then based on the sales, I'm trying to give what is my cost of goods sold percentage, what is my GP, what is my selling and distribution, what is the fixed expenses, what's the depreciation expenses. Like that, you can give the percentage, right? Each item could be reflected, provided, displayed based on the percentage of sales. So which is uniform again year on year. So it is easy for you to compare. Say in this example, it's like more clarity on this slide. If you take interest expense is 1.95% in 2010. In 2009, it's 1.79. As a percentage of sales, it's 1.79, has come down, has increased to 1.95, which gives you an understanding. Means interest expenses has been in the increasing trend from 9 to 10. Because it's easy to see what exactly happened within the financial statement. It's something that, you can do it year on year. But here, rather than you taking year on year, you took it as within the financial statement. It's a method where more clarity for us to evaluate the performance of a firm. Similarly, we have common size balance sheet, more clarity on the next slide, where you take assets as 100, liability and owner's equity as 100. So based on that, you provide how much is my accounts payable as against my total equity, total capital employed. How much is my common stock as total capital employed? Or what's my cash percentage against the total assets? What's my depreciation, accumulated depreciation as a percentage? So like that, so you can have the common size balance sheet also for us to interpretation purposes, analysis purposes. So basically this gives us understanding of statements, what is these statements, and how we are going to define, and how we are going to analyze further on these financial statements, right? Then we have something called ratios. And before moving to that, since that we have learned three things, so it also we can mention in the financial tools also, right? So first one we say across time, right? So that we call horizontal analysis, right? Compare your financials across time means horizontal analysis. Then number two, comparison within the financials is also called vertical analysis. Horizontal analysis, vertical analysis. Third one, analysis across the industry we call trend analysis. So vertical, horizontal, trend. There are three. Fourth one is the ratio analysis. So somebody asked about what are the tools available in analyzing the financials. We can say horizontal analysis, vertical analysis, trend analysis, and ratio analysis. So we just mentioned three. The fourth one we are going to do in detail. That's a financial ratio analysis, right? By the way, if you do have any questions, right, so you can ask me. Yes, Dilanja, good morning. And Malaka, Sanji, only three of you that today joined. So this is like quite an important area also. But please interrupt me whenever that if you don't, if you're not understanding the kind of concepts, please, let me stop and explain it again if you need sort of additional input. So ratios are the analyst microscope. They allow us to get a better view of the firm's financial health than just looking at the raw financial statement, right? So when you say P&L, balance sheet, cash flows, but rather than looking into more macro view on that, but you can get a more microwave information if you go and discuss the ratios with more clarity by classifying or clustering them further into different areas. So generally these financial ratios could be important for two parties, that is internal, external. Internally, like management, like business analyst, industry analyst. So basically they use it for planning and evaluation, right? So planning means strategic planning for what could be the like our future and what we are doing right now. For that is important for planning. Number two, evaluation of management, right? That is for evaluation for different activities, management activities, right? Maybe unit performance, branch performance, sector performance, department performance, individual performance. I mean, everything could be measured further analyze using these ratios. Example, say in our banking jargon, we try to use, say, NPL, gross NPL, net NPL, that's year-on-year NPL, branch-wise NPL, unit-wise NPL, because it is important for us to get an idea how the ratio has been moved across time, across the previous periods, like, so give you an understanding. External users also, that's about bankers, tax authorities, auditors, right? So basically investors, because that also important. For them also it is important. Let's say bankers, so we use those ratios to sanction credit. Or maybe investor, or maybe some outsiders, they might see how the unit, how the company is performing. Then investors, whether to invest more or divest their exposure based on some of the ratios that they understand about the company. So internally it's important, externally it's important. So this is again important slides. Sometimes they might ask about what's the importance of financial ratio and who are the beneficiaries of using financial ratios. That is, internal people, external people. So you can use this slide for that purpose. Generally, we can further categorize, cluster these ratios into liquidity, efficiency, leverage and coverage, profitability, market valuation. So this is to further understand, right? So generally, when you give a P&L, balance sheet, cash flows, right? So we can do further analysis by clustering my financial statements into these categories. So it's easy, right? Like profitability, liquidity, efficiency, leverage, coverage, market performance, like that. So there may be several methods, several clusters for us to understand further. So let's now try to understand them with a more clarity. What are those things and why it is important, right? So as I told you in the beginning, so I have given almost all the ratios pertaining to these categories in the attachment also. You can read through that also. In addition, in today's presentation, that it has been also included. Liquidity. There are three ratios: current, quick, cash. Those are the sub-category ratios falling under the liquidity ratio. Liquidity is defined the speed with which an asset can be converted to cash. Let's say if you have cash in your purse, in your business, easily you can dispose because it's cash. But cash at bank, again, similarly you can use it for some form of servicing of the liabilities. Or treasury bill, treasury bond, again it's a easily used to service some of your liabilities. But debtors, stocks may not that easy, but again that can be convertible to cash. So the speed, the time taken, the ability to doing so is the liquidity of a firm. More precisely, it describes the ability of a firm to meet its current obligation. what is my current obligation in general? Creditors, accrued expenses like electricity, water, like utility payments and tax payments, short-term loans, overdraft interest are my current obligation in general. So how soon, how well, how capable me servicing these current liabilities will tell you how liquid you are. Similarly, it is common to person for us also. Let's say if you don't have any money in your purse to meet day-to-day expenses, means that you are not liquid enough. But vice versa, say you are liquid enough to meet your day-to-day obligations. Similar with the firm. There are three ratios: current, quick, cash. If you remember correct, we discussed same under the working capital computation also, this liquidity ratio, but we have not gone into this level. Just we took those two ratios and did the computation, but here gives you the understanding what is liquidity ratio. This is how we are going to compute current ratio, assets divided by current liability. So it's illustration where we have taken some numbers in the P&L and balance sheet and substitute here for better understanding. That is, current assets has been given as 1290, liabilities is 540, and assets divided by liability give you that number 2.39. In generally, we prefer current ratio is more than 1.5. That is the norm. But depending on the industry, it could change. But generally, we prefer current ratio is more than 1.5. It's a base. It's a norm for current ratio. Right? In quick ratio is defined as current assets minus stocks divided by current liabilities. It's another ratio. Because current ratio is defined current assets divided by current liability. Quick ratio is defined current assets minus inventories divided by current liabilities. So again, you can use that numbers. You can do it at home also, but for better understanding, I taken current assets from that EPI balance sheet and the inventories for the same for 2010. Assets minus inventory divided by current liability. We have get a quick ratio. But generally, quick ratio should stand 1 or more. That is a norm. So means current ratio should be more than 1.5 times. Quick ratio should be more than 1. But it's less than 1 means it is not good. Right? It needs attention. Cash ratio, it not be used frequently, but you can define and you can calculate. That is, what is the availability of cash to service the current liability, right? Not the stocks, not the debtors. How much cash in your hand to service the current liability? There's no norm for that, but you can calculate. Here it is something about 0.09, something like 9% in other terms, right? So means you have out of your current liabilities, so there may be a 10% the cash kind of reserve so that you can service the liability. Higher the number could be much better. Something 50% means that you shouldn't be worried anytime, because you can anytime pay off, because 50% capacity cash alone rather than the stocks and debtors. But again, you need to think about, because having cash in your hand without any investment means it's not good. So to manage more optimized way, cash, debtor, stocks, and other current assets to meet the current liability. So this is basically the liquidity, very important ratio in a firm. If your firm is not liquid enough, then it creates so many problems to efficiency of the firm and profitability of the firm. In the long term, it has lot of impact on performances. So liquidity ratios are very important in terms of organization day-to-day operations, right? Before moving to the efficiency ratio, any questions? Malaka, Dilanja, Sanjeev, any questions? Any gray areas?
No, sir.
Okay. About Dilanja? Okay, right. Malaka, hope that you also are okay. But if anything, please let me know, because these are a bit of important in terms of maybe past papers sometimes, right? So anyway, it's a core of the development financing, because when you say in the project, when you say it's a viability, financial viability is one of them. Because last week, previous week, so we discussed about other viabilities, like how to assess the management, market, technical, right? Those things we have used some tools to gauge it. But today we are trying to understand, how a firm is viable in terms of financial perspective. Then efficiency. When the efficiency word comes to your mind, it basically talks about something related to utilization. So, what are the things important in terms of running a firm? That is assets, right? Because you have some assets in the firm. These are fixed assets and current assets. So how will you use those assets to generate income? Turnover will tell you how efficient you are, right? Because those are your capacity, right? Assets is your capacity of a firm. So you need to run, you need to deploy them properly. And then it will have impact on outcome, that is ratios, sorry, income, sales, revenue. To generate that, yes, you need to deploy those things effectively and efficiently, right? So there are some ratios relevant to long, like fixed assets. There are some ratios relevant to current assets. This was also learned at under working capital, but here we will do it again. Those are inventory turnover, account receivable like debtors turnover, collection or the creditors turnover. There are three ratios relevant to current assets. Fixed total assets turnover relevant to fixed assets. So how well you use it, your assets in a firm, to generate turnover, to generate revenue. Ratios, inventory turnover is cost of goods sold divided by inventory. COGS divided by inventory. Then inventory turnover is this much. Means how many times you turn your stocks within a year. Means, so 3.88 times I'll turn my stocks within a year. If somebody wanted to make it in number of days, means 365 to be divided by inventory turnover. 365 divided by inventory turnover. I think this time there were 20 marks question just to compute inventory period, debtor period, creditor period, 555, and operating cycle and cash cycle, another 5. So very easy question. You can easily get the 20 marks. I think again we may not have that sort of questions, but very easy question, right? And then many students have scored because I have seen this when marking some of the papers. So it was a kind of very easy question, but mainly the question was asked from this area. By inventory turnover, you have to cost of goods sold divided by the inventory period. Then you need to make some modification, that is 365 divided by inventory turnover. Right. I will just right, good question. Sanjeev, it's like this. In general, first I'll explain inventory turnover is something average inventory divided by COS. 1. Number 2, inventory period or stock turnover period is 365 into average stocks divided by COGS. Just say stocks divided by this much. Fine. Stocks divided by COGS. COGS this is times inventory period is, sorry, we'll say just take inventory right. So this is the normal equation. Sanjay, I will come to your question. Inventory turnover is something cost of goods sold divided by inventory, that is coming as time. Inventory period is make some changes where inventory divided by COGS into 365. This is for all other like inventory, stock turnover, creditors turnover. It will be like this equation, and inventory period. But this is applicable. Say 8, 9, 10. So if you are doing your calculation year on year, you use this. Why? Because you use the same data set for each year. So 2008, you use 2008 data to the computation. 9 data 10 computation. Now we are in a situation we have been asked to compute these ratios. We have been given some 2008 data, 2009 data, and our requirement is to compute 2009 only. Sometimes we have been asked to compute 2009 inventory turnover or inventory period. Then we have to get some numbers from P&L and balance sheet. Why? COGS is from P&L. This is P&L number. This is balance sheet number. But if you are computing and comparing year on year, there's no harm. You can use inventory, not average inventory. But when you have been asked to compute only for particular year by giving 2 years, then you need to do this amendment where then for only 2009, then you will get, say, COGS for 2009 divided by average inventory 2008 and 2009. So get the average. Why? One is from P&L, one is from balance sheet, in order to negate these timing issues. We are trying to take averaging, because otherwise for 1 year you have closing stock goes to the opening stock there, right? But maybe 2009 you have closing stock and opening stocks is coming from 2008. If you are not taking the 2008, that's closing stock, so that is opening stock for 2009, if based on some accounting treatment, this figure, the stock figure, may give a wrong picture. In order to minimize that, you try to get 8 numbers, 9 numbers, averaging the stocks. And you use the COGS 2009. Because cost of goods sold for 2009 is a result of how you managing the opening stocks and the closing stock of that period. 2009 opening stocks means closing stock of 2008. If it's very high number, then the COGS is a result of managing these 2009 opening stocks until 2009 closing stock. Hence, if you have been asked to compute only for year, with 2 years given, you use average inventory, average debtors, average creditors, which is this time question. But you have not been asked to compute for particular year, but you have been asked to compare year on year, then you just take inventory for that particular year. Because there is no impact, because you compute in the same way and you compare 8, 9, 10, 11, because going forward. Sanjeev, am I answer your question or any further complications? මාලක එහෙමද හැදුවේ ගාන? මාලක මේ පාර තිබුණා නේද එහෙම ගානක්? Question number 6. Have you attempted in that way? Took the average and the computer? Very good. Hopefully you have used the 365 days. Doesn't matter, even 360 that you can get the marks. But I presume that you have used the 365. Is it? Great. Means that you don't have any issues on that. Obviously, you can get the 20 marks for that question. So many students have scored 20 marks for that question. So if you mean that if you have done that question, So no worries about you passing the exam, because then almost you are there with 20 marks. Another 25 to achieve, which is not a big task. Good that Malak is still joining with us. I'm sure that you have gone through this time. No worries. Let's see. Right. So again, we move to right. And that's the inventory turnover. So remember, general equation is COGS divided by the inventory, right? And similarly, account receivable, that's a debtors turnover, is credit sales divided by account receivable, right? And collections also same. Either you can use 365, 360 is immaterial, but prefer you use a 365, right? So if you are computing the turnover, whatever data turnover, creditors turnover, stock turnover, there is a one equation. That's like sales divided by account receivable, cost of goods sold divided by account receivable, cost of goods sold by accounts payable. But when you want number of days, you have to use that the other equation. We are 365 divided by average stock. Sorry, 365 divided by inventory into 365. 365 divided by debtors into annual sales. 365 divided by creditors into cost of goods sold. I mean, small change on what we have done here. But if it is for year on year, like what we have done for the this time past paper, right? So it is where you try to get average stock, average creditors, average debtors. Hope that you have got it. Right. The fixed asset turnover and the total asset turnover, there's another two types where you can get an idea, right, on how best that you have used the assets of the firm. So when you say fixed assets turnover, sales turnover divided by net fixed assets, right, means turnover divided by assets. So how many times, like say here answer is 10 times. So it's 20 times means, so you are able to turn your cycle 20 times, like, and it's a better, right? Let's say 2 times means, so the contribution from the assets to generate turnover is less, especially like it's a manufacturing organization where you have high valued assets. In that sense, the impact of assets to turnover is less because higher asset base. But if you say trading firm, you need not to have that much of assets to generate sales, right? It's a small room, right? That will be sufficient. Not a bigger kind of assets, machines and all those buildings are not required. Right? You just order and sell it. Only the current assets will be there. Here the fixed assets. But it's a manufacturing firm, buildings, machinery, sub-machinery. I mean, so many things are needed. So depending on the industry also, this will vary. And the last part, total assets. That include current assets. Fixed assets, current assets, both, how well contributing to the sales. Okay? Right. Any questions? Any questions? Give me a minute. So if you don't have questions, we can move to leverage. That is like, you might have heard this more or less like gearing also. Gearing, leverage, right? So here it talks about that how much of debt that a firm has used to finance its assets. That's what we are trying to see. Because assets are fixed and current. So how much has been used to finance that in terms of debt, in terms of equity. So we generally prefer everything is from equity because we don't have any financial risk. But you can't practically have it. So you have to have a balance of debt and equity. So where you can say total debt ratio, long-term debt ratio, debt to equity ratio, long-term debt to equity. So there may be number of ratios can be calculated. Say total debt. In other terms, we call this as leverage ratio also, right? Where total liabilities, including current and long-term, as against assets, right? Asset liability ratio. We call this debt ratio, but again we say it's more or less leverage, right? Liabilities to assets, or debt ratio. If you refer the 2010 EPI balance sheet, see total liabilities is 964, asset is 106,650. So debt ratio is like liabilities to assets like 58.4, because there is no norm for that what could be the debt ratio, but generally you can compute liabilities to asset. The long-term debt, that is also, we can say the total debt is one thing, and long-term debt is where you can see, because your assets is basically current assets and fixed assets is being financed by the long-term debt. Means you talk about stability. Let's say you have taken long-term loans to finance fixed assets and the current assets. How much is that? That's a 25% in this area. So if it is like maybe 50%, means that not only the fixed assets, maybe part of the current assets also financed by long-term debt. That's also good in terms of stability. But it's not the ideal way. If you remember, we talk about 3 methods of working capital strategy, where you can use long-term like equity and debt to finance the current assets. That means the stability. But ideally we say short-term working capital, like, I mean, short-term working capital for short-term assets. That's what we say. And current liabilities to use current assets in the more acceptable way. But you can use the long-term liabilities to finance the current assets also. That means stability. So basically, long-term debt ratio is long-term debt to total assets. Earlier we learned that is debt liabilities to asset. That's a debt ratio. Long-term debt means long-term debt to assets. So this is like debt to equity. Debt to equity. So total liabilities to total equity. That includes short-term and long-term liabilities, both as against equity. This is mostly is like long-term to total equity. There may be, I mean, there is no harm that, how many number of ratios you are going to compute, but interpretation is different one to other. Long-term debt to equity means long-term debt to total equity. This is very much important in terms of development financing. I mean, out of all equations, this is what we are interested, because we are not very much worried about short-term debt. Why? Because it's generally we understand short-term debt is there and could be serviced through current assets, right? That's what we, earlier learned about through liquidity, right? How much the current assets they are to service the current liabilities. So we are not very much worried on that. But in project financing, in development financing, we we are interested to see that how the long-term debt is linked to the equity, because this long-term debt is used to finance most of the capital expenditure of the project. So that's what we say 60 to 40. 60-40, you have asked them. Was the debt equity is like 60-40? It is a no. When you say debt equity 60-40 means there is a long-term debt that you need to be worried, not the total debt. When you say total debt, it could be long-term and short-term debt both. But we are not very keen on short-term debt. Import part is a long-term debt divided by equity. Long-term debt is 424 here, equity 685. 62, 61.9 actually speaking. But it could be go 65 to 70, but 70 means higher debt component as against the equity. But we prefer it's like 60-40 because it's a development project. But it's a like very much stable projects. So sometimes we might go even 80% also, because we know for sure that they are well established, they can repay the debt. Any questions? Let me have any thoughts here. Any difficulty, gray area, any clarifications? Mahalaka, Sanjeev, Dilanja. Right, okay. Now, since you know the leverage or gearing ratio, again important to see that coverage. What is the coverage? Means now you give a loan to customer. Customer is going to start a project, generate cash flows, and using the cash flows, customer is going to service your debt, service your interest. When you want to service your debt and interest, you need to see whether his debt servicing capacity. For that, there are two important ratios. First one we say interest cover ratio times interest earn ratio, and the other one is debt service cover ratio. That's the last one. Interest cover, that's the time interest earn ratio, and the debt service cover ratio is the last one. Cash coverage is not so great, not so important, but first and third one important. So means how well the firm is in a position to service the interest, which tells times interest earn ratio. How well the firm is into service interest and capital, that is a debt service cover ratio. So interest cover ratio is earnings before interest and tax, or rather we can say operating profit. In Sri Lankan context, we take profit after tax actually, right? But before interest and depreciation, because in Sri Lanka, generally we pay the tax and see what is available for interest servicing. But in, if you search Google, it says earnings, profit before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Everything is being set aside. Sorry, everything is not deducted. And what's the profit before? Profits before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. But in Sri Lanka, we say profit before interest, depreciation, amortization, not tax. Tax being deducted. And then we take that figure above as the using instead of EBIT or PBID, right? So hope that you have got it, because in Sri Lankan context only, we are taking the tax being deducted when computing the interest cover and the debt service cover. So earnings before interest and tax in this example divided by interest expense for that 2010. If you want to 2009, you use the 2009 number interest expense, right? EBIT divided by interest expense. Okay, but if you go to textbooks, yes, you can see this formula: profit or earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization divided by interest expense. But in Sri Lanka, we use interest before depreciation, amortization, and earnings before interest, depreciation, amortization, and not tax. Tax being deducted when you compute in this interest expense. That's what, Sri Lankan scenario. This is not great important, but here this is important. Debt service cover ratio similar, profit before interest, depreciation, or amortization, or net profit after tax, right? Either, and divided by not only interest, the capital as well, right? So I'll further explain that just to understand better. Generally, if you take a P&L, we have turnover and we have GP and we have operating profit and profit before tax, profit after tax. That's what we generally have. Here we have tax, maybe interest, depreciation. Right. And this is the P&L. If you go to balance sheet, we say fixed asset, current assets, current liabilities, net fixed asset, long-term liability, equity, total capital. Here, 2010 to 2009 to 2010. Also, we have this. Now, when it comes to the interest cover, we need to take some figure and interest. Say we are computing 2010. Interest, no issue because it's a 2010. This is the figure. You get that. No argument. When it comes to this one, profit before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, that's what the original equation is. But in Sri Lanka, so we need to exclude this. That's what it says. Means profit before interest, depreciation, amortization after tax and interest. That's the only change. Means, let's say you will have some PAT figure, PAT, then you add back tax. Right? It is equal to this. Simple as that. Profit after tax. Or we can say profit before tax. That's also okay. Sorry, profit after tax I think I made a mistake. Plus interest and depreciation and amortization if any. I think I made a mistake there. So PBIDA after tax means PAT plus interest, depreciation, amortization. You take operating profit, then minus tax and get the figure. That is how we need to use it, because there is a 2010 P&L. You have turnover, GP, OP, PBT, PAT, but tax being deducted will come to the PAT. But in this equation, as against the original, we need to use the profit after tax, but before interest, depreciation, and amortization, if any. So two methods: you can take operating profit minus tax and used here. You can take profit after tax, add back interest, depreciation, and amortization, and use here. No change in interest component for 2010. Any questions? Sanjeev, Dilanja, Malaka, any questions? Right. Sanjeev, we have 2010. We have turnover, GP, OP, PBT, PAT. Balance sheet also I have current assets, current liabilities, right? And then net fixed assets that will come for the next equation. So, what is the interest cover equation is profit before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization divided by interest. So, interest for the 2010, no issue, it has been there. You just take that into account. Now, our challenge is to find what is PBIDTDA. If you go by this, it's just OP. Operating profit is the number coming here, because it is operating profit is before interest, before depreciation, before tax, and before amortization. But Sri Lanka, what we are trying to do here is we are not using operating profit or profit before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. Instead, we deduct tax before computing this. How you can do that is you will take operating profit as it is, then reduce tax for that particular year and use that figure here. If not, you straight away go to the profit after tax, because that is mean after paying tax, we have a number PAT, then add back interest, add back depreciation, add back amortization if any. Get that number. Means again it's similar to operating profit minus tax. Am I clear? Right. What about Dilanje? What about Malak? You got that equation computation correctly. Is there any underlying reason for this difference in? Yeah, basically Malaka, actually now we prefer organizations pay tax. It's like mandatory. If you make in a profit, you need to make, pay that and do the computation. That's why if you take IBSL old past papers, basically they take profit after tax. But if you see all the other textbooks, it is other way around. But just for your understanding, you take this in terms of examination purposes. Fine. Then number 2, we need to do DSCR, debt service cover ratio. That is no change in the top, right? OP plus tax OP minus tax, or operating profit minus tax, or PAT plus this figure. But here, capital and interest. Interest, no issue, you can take it. Capital, you can take from 2009 and 10. There's a difference between 2009, 2010. Capital outstanding, capital outstanding. If you take balance sheet, generally, you have 2009, say, 2 billion loan outstanding. 2010, it's something, say, 1.9 billion. So 100 million is the capital figure here. Or if not, you can go straight away to the cash flow. It's a capital paid during the year. This is the figure you are getting. Capital paid during the year. Interest paid during the year. So there's no change in the top. That is previously used PBITDA, but Sri Lankan context you use PAT plus interest, depreciation, amortization, or operating profit minus tax. Either way is correct. Only difference is you bring the capital. How you can take the capital is straight away you go to the cash flow, you have that number. If not, you can take approximation. Yeah, 2009 and 2010 long-term debt difference between 9 to 10 is approximation for the capital payments during the year. Any explanation, clarifications? All good. Sanjeev, Ilanja, Malaka. Here, is that clear? Yes, Sanjeev, yes. Sometimes lease rentals, you can take it because as a capital. It's a part of that. How much you have paid. Like if you can understand, if you correctly get the lease capital payments, you can take that. But if not, if you use the loan capital here, no harm. It means anyways lease a commitment, right? A long-term commitment, so you can use that here. Like long-term repayments, whether it's a lease rental, it's a loan installment, loan capital, either are included. But in case of exam, we need to be very much worried because for exam purposes, they would give us but like the capital components. Generally, but in practical scenario, might not be easy to find lease installment paid because it's a combination, lease capital, interest, and other things because it's going as a rental. So you can't take that total number as your capital. A part of that could be a capital, part could be like interest, right? So if it's interest, whether it's lease interest or the long-term interest, loan interest, you have to take it for interest component. And then the capital could be like that. So when you say we can like capital and interest, then what our easy way out is part of the capital and part of the interest are there. We will say rentals are included in the denominator. So capital එක loan වලට එනවා interest එක එනවා loan වල interest එක leases වල since you can't segregate it as a capital and interest, you will take it as whole where you assume capital and interest are within that. So in overall it doesn't make a big difference. Right. We'll continue. Then profitability ratio also important because when you talk about profitability, it basically gives you an understanding how profitable of the firm, right? So there may be several equations to that extent, GP, OP, NP margin, and also if we included ROI, ROE as well. That means for how profitable in terms of OP, NP, and GP, and how profitable in terms of ROI and ROE. So that's what equation, but it's not difficult to compute. GP is something, GP to sales, GP to turnover. I mean, again, you compare year on year and as per the industry. So what's my GP margin? What's my OP margin? What's my NP margin? Then I compare with last year to this year. If last year to this year, say GP is like 16 and it has been increased, means I am done well with in terms of efficiency. But decrease means I'm not done well with my efficiency. So that's what we interpret. So due to automation, due to other learning curve impact, and due to like layout changes and all that, so you can improve your efficiency in a firm. එතකොට GP margin එක උඩට යනවා. So GP එක උඩට යනවා කියලා කියන්නේ OP උඩට යනවා in relation to that. NP උඩට යනවා. So that's good news, right? So we try to make different things to make our GP up, GP margin increase. Then OP, it's like operating profit, operating income divided by sales, right? Again, but year on year you can compute that. OP to sales, net operating income divided by sales. Here 199 divided by 3,900, so it is something 5% as for the numbers given for 2010 for EPI company. Then NP margin, that is net income to sales, net profit to sales. Generally from OP to NP is how well that you have managed your interest expenses, because interest, depreciation, tax has been deducted when come to NP. So if you are very good at managing your interest expenses, it can be shown, it can be seen under the NP margin, right? So generally we talk about, year on year we compare our NP, net profit, because though it's a recorded, it's a reported number, that gives you an understanding, how well the company is doing from year on year or compared to competitors, compared to other firms in the industry. Then ROI, or ROA, return on assets, that is income to assets. Like earlier we talked about turnover to assets is something efficiency. Here return, like if a bank, income to assets, it's not very high figure because we have a huge asset base, is something about 2% to 3%. There are some other like companies, especially into the sales, their income to sales assets are very high. Why? A lesser number of fixed assets, lesser number of assets, including current assets. But it's a manufacturing firm, you have a huge number like a bank. Then income to, because it's good that you know what is ROA, return on assets, right? So you can compare year on year, and then you can work on how to improve ROA further. Year on year means you have to increase your income mainly so that you can bring that ratio up. ROE, it's very common ratio where everybody is very keen to know, especially investors. Return on equity, that is the income to total equity, because equity is basically given by, introduced by the investors of a firm, and they interested in how much I am getting a return. That based on what is the income generated by the firm. Means like if I have some money, I can put it to fixed deposit. My return is risk-free, something say these days 6%. Stock market, that's a bit risky, but I am getting this much. There are some other investments, I can get this much of return. I can put that money into EPI company because its a ROE is 11%, right there. How much I can get back? Return on equity. Higher would be better for investor perspective. Means how well that you increase your income. So that is why most of our other exercises are important in terms of bank. We are booking quality assets, booking high interest yield assets, improving efficiency in terms of operations, reduction of impairment and other provisioning. Means you can increase your income level. That is good for investors. As also good in terms of getting higher remuneration, bonuses, incentives, and all that. But one of the stakeholders of banks are investors. So they look at these ratios. If they are in the share market, they look at some other ratios, which we discuss very soon. ROE, very important ratio. Income to equity. This is not so important. Right. Any questions on profitability? Because these ratios are not difficult, but in sometimes, especially credit management, we can see number of questions coming from this area, but project financing or the development financing, we haven't seen very much. But it's good that at least we know what is these ratios, and how we are going to compute like these ratios if like under the MCQs also. So for that purpose, I think it could be useful. Market valuation. This is bit important in terms of investors again, because there may be a company, there may be banks, and then they, in order to get the funds into the particular company, they issue shares and being traded in Colombo or whatever stock markets. And then investors come and purchase or invest on those shares. So there are some ratios you can check in terms of stock market performance of the particular company, particular bank, particular entity. These are price earning or price book ratio. So based on that, further investors will come, or investors take their investment decision to acquire further or dispose, divest their stock portfolio of a particular company. This basically depends on how well the company operating it's in general environment compared to industry. That's why you see commercial bank shares are higher price as against the Nation First Bank. Sampath Bank shares are higher price against some other bank, because based on the performance, investors has different perception, and then they will purchase, trade their shares. But this is important share ratios for them to take that investment decision. Price earning ratio is a stock price divided by earnings per share. stock price is the prevailing 230, 240, 250, like that. Earnings per share is each year you have some earnings, profit after tax, divided by number of shares. Earnings per share. Total earnings divided by total number of shares. එතකොට ඒක මේ යටට තෙනවා උඩට දාන stock price එක. එතකොට අපි කියනවා price earning ratio එක කොච්චරක්ද. So based on that, investors know whether we have further growth. P ratio of this much. Earlier it's 10, now it's 2. So whether they can go to 10 or more. What's the industry PE and as against your particular company's price earning ratio. I'm not sure whether we have. If you see this, I think here some of the not much, no. No, it's not there. Price earning, because if you go to the stock market and if you click it particular company, so they will show most of these ratios. It's a price earning ratio of the particular company, what's the highest PE and what's the industry average, and where the particular company placed among the rest of the peer companies, like that. So gives an understanding. Price book, that is this one, price book ratio, where stock to book value, because that earnings per share is something, then book value is something. Per each company, we can say this is the book value per share. That's again, you can say it might grow further, but the book value could be something say 200 per share, but market price could be something about 180. Means there is a room for growth. So book value is where you take as for the company whatever forecast of this is what a maximum value per share as per the internal performances. But in a market, it is being sold due to some other factors, maybe at a discount or maybe at a premium also. For example, based on the asset and net book value is something, say 10 rupees. But due to some other reasons, being marketed at 20. So book value එකට වඩා වැඩිපුර trade වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. Book value අඩුව trade වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. So here price to book is something, price divided by book value, and whether 1, less than 1, more than 1. We again given you an understanding of how the market behave, market perform, market perceive of the particular company stock. These are not very much important for us because we are not, very much dealing with these numbers, because other ratios are very much relevant, especially for SME and mid-corporate type customers. But if our customer is like corporate type of customer, and then they basically, their shares being traded in the stock market, then we also have that exposure, insight towards how they perform in the market. They perform in outsiders' perspective. That is also important, whether over a period of time, how the stock being traded. Important for us, because that tells us whether investors are approaching or investors are moving out of this company, from this company to this company, like that. That will be important. Then next, with that, actually we are done with the kind of some basic ratios. You can also further familiarize those ratios with the document that I have shared here. So we'll discuss it, whatever the documentation after, winding up with the slide. Now, in case for exam or other purposes, if you want to memorize the ratios, this is something that you could do. Let's say any margin ratio is something divided by sales. Something divided by sales. Where OP margin, NP margin, GP margin means OP obvious divided by sales, NP divided by sales, GP divided by sales. Margin means something divided by sales. Easy to remember. Turnover ratio is sales or variation of sales divided by something. Say stock turnover is something. Cost of goods sold or cost of sales divided by stock. Debtors turnover. Credit sales divided by debtors. Creditors turnover. Cost of sales divided by creditors. Something margin, turnover. Then return on ratio is a net income or a variation of net income divided by something. Return on ratio, right? Return on income, return on equity, return on assets. Net income divided by, or variation of something. Income divided by assets. Income divided by equity. Getting the point? Because some ratios that, easy to memorize using these basic rules. Not all, but can do with respect to some ratios. In case if you forget it in exam situation, you can use it, this methodology to get it further recap on computation, because sometimes we have been asked to compute ratios in exam, so that this could be useful. Then using financial ratios. Earlier also we internal and external that we discussed that, there are some purposes you can use it. Here 4 uses has been given. One, trend, internal or external trend analysis. We'll discuss what is that. Then internal, external, industry average comparisons. Internally, setting, evaluating company goals, performance, evaluation of the management. External, restrictive debt covenants like credit sanctioning. Because earlier we saw that who are the users, who are the beneficiaries of these ratios, internal and external. Here it further describes that what type of activity can be done using the ratios. So trend, examination of ratios over time. What happened in 1995, 2000, 2005, 2010, 2015, like that. So you can, project it, the trend, whether it's good, whether it's bad, right? So you can't just take maybe 2 years, but it's good that if you can 10-year horizon, 5-year horizon, like in companies and banks annual report, we are trying to use that, right? So we generally use it for 5-year, 10-year. So what is the turnover? What's the net income movement? What's the NPL movement? So ROE movement. So important. Trend. it gives you an understanding whether how, well the adopted strategy worked on the company activity and resulted performances. Industry. Here we have been given some 2009 and 2010 numbers as against the industry, the first column. Each ratio, liquidity, efficiency, leverage, coverage, profitability, and other ratio. What the industry average? And what's my company average? If you take current ratio, industry is 2.7 times, whereas we are at 2.39 in 2010. 2009 is 2.33. Still to go a long way. Means that you have some issue. You need to manage your working capital, liquidity in a firm. That's what it says. So it basically gives you an understanding a industry perspective versus a company perspective. This is also good if you can get the numbers available in terms of industry performance, but sometimes might not be able to find those in most of the industries. But if it is a corporate and high level of company and high level of industries, so probably you are in a position to understand that and compare that because data is available. Company goals and debt covenants, because you can set some financial targets about CASA growth, profitability growth, NPLs, impairment, right? Because that's maybe at a senior management level or maybe operational level. If you take about strategic management level, you can say this is ROE. You need to have ROE of this much. You have to have PAT of this much. You need to have organization-wide asset growth of this much. So that you can set the targets, set the goals. Rather, debt covenants, where maybe the banker who provides debts to a company can impose a debt covenants like maintain of current ratio of 1.5 or above, debt service cover ratio of 1.5 and above, debt to equity ratio not more than 60%, capex expenses not more than 5% of the whatever asset or the present level can be imposed to have better control of your firm where you extended some credits. That's also another purpose. So generally there are 4 outcomes uses by these internal and external parties, because that might be important for us to in terms of practical scenario and also in terms of examination scenario also. Because sometimes the examiner could ask what are the purpose, what's the advantage of financial statement, ratio analysis. These are the advantages. So you need to say 1, 2, 3, 4 with examples where you can get the 5 marks. Okay. So generally what we have learned today, we try to understand what is financial statements, what type of financial statements, brief description of financial statement, what are the financial statement analysis tools, horizontal, vertical, trend, ratio, 4 tools. What each of these? What is ratio analysis? Why it is important? Who are the users of ratio analysis? Then we move to categories of ratios. liquidity, efficiency, coverage, leverage, market performance, and profitability. 6 categories. Under each key ratios, we learned how to compute that. We showed it through illustration of the worked examples. At the end, we introduced some methods to memorize ratios. And finally, we discuss about the users' advantage of these ratios, trend analysis and goal settings, performance settings, introducing with governance, for important for different stakeholders. Right. So I think we have done a kind of overall idea about financial statement analysis. In terms of examinations, we haven't seen many questions except like working capital related questions and maybe some MCQs and related to some computation of some of those ratios, not like credit management, but again important because these are not difficult area. You can get maximum marks out of this area. Since that we have done the working capital management earlier, so it's basically it's going hands in hand where many questions has been come under working capital. So that's why I wanted to do it separately, but it's a part of this ratio and statement analysis. Any questions before discussing the kind of the other tools here, other documents here? Nalaka, Dilanja, Sanjeev, any questions? Any clarifications? Okay, Sanjay. Right. Then we just go through kind of documents. Right here, this one is basically ratio description. As I told you, here there are several ratios which are extracted from textbook, and it says how we are going to compute that and what's the interpretation of that. But as I was telling you, interest cover, generally they compute operating profit divided by interest expense. But here, instead of operating profit, we will deduct the tax component here and do the computation. So like that, there may be some amendments to whatever Sri Lankan practice, but not many, right? So you can read through this, and not all the ratios are relevant, but just refer what we have learned, like GP margin, GP sales. Measure profit generated after consideration of cost of products sold, OP margin, NP margin, right? So it's basically gives you an understanding what is the ratio and how it basically computed and what's interpretation. This again gives you an idea where not the same way that we learn, but it's like liquidity, debt management, asset management, profitability, right? Investor perspective, right? So there may be, same thing, but it clustered. Like if you take profitability, you can say ROA, but again, ROA also important for investors also, right? So depending on the several stakeholders and several purposes, so there may be a further classification of that, right? So this is the rest of the part. So it's good that you read through and get an idea about what is ratio, how it's been computed, and what's the meaning of that. Here you can read through introduction, where basically what is financial statement, right? You know, who are the interested parties, who are the beneficiaries, right? Each short note on each statement, what like horizontal, vertical, and like, you know, the analysis that we discussed, and different type of financial ratios and some worked examples, right? So you can read through and get a further idea on financial statement analysis and ratio analysis. So this is what I discuss about. This is the question that you can, you know, do, because for further familiarization, you can compute many number of ratios relevant to these categories. And then this is what we have done. And probably I think this is the kind of answers for that ABC question. So you can compute the answer and see whether you're getting the particular answer, so that you can validate your computation. And this is another worked example on, actually this is the kind of question, right? I think part they have put, I think it should be like, I think they have not done it apparently. Yeah, I'll ask them to upload because there are two things they have not taken here, because there may be one, this suggested description is there, right? But the question has not been uploaded properly. So we'll ask them to, you know, do it again. You can get the this worked example, and question is has not been uploaded, but the answer is there. And then rest thing, I think it's there here. This homework and answer are there. Only missing is the one part where this has not been, description is there. The question has not been uploaded, but I'll ask them to do it here. Yeah, this is not the right one. Right. Okay. Right. That's it from my end. Any questions? So next week probably we can discuss about financial forecasting. Taking a part of this, again we can do a kind of a exercise together, you know, where because this is something about existing P&L, balance sheet, cash flow analysis, and then what could happen if the customer comes afresh, where no previous financial background, and then you need to use some assumptions to do future P&L, balance sheet, cash flow forecast. So again, you try to do that and use this some of the ratios to interpret how would be the future, and based on that we say that we can, you know, give a loan or not to a customer. So that's what the next part. And then after that we have 3 more sessions to go about, you know, investment tools and analysis, and project appraisal, maybe the like more detailed area on about various feasibilities. Finally, about 6 projects, right? So hopefully that we are in a position to, you know, end the sessions by end March, or maybe 3rd week of the March, and then thereafter maybe we try to take some questions until New Year. So I mean during the April, probably we might have some, you know, exams on June. So we have ample time, but it's up to you to, you know, work as much as possible, and then, you know, get a kind of more details, right, on more work on, you know, whatever we have done. And as I mentioned on the other day, like see whether that you can cluster past paper questions into the whatever particular area, and then start working. Right. That's it from my end. Any questions? Right. So then we'll stop for that today. So we'll meet next week at the same time and have a enjoyable week ahead. Right. Thank you.